Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our presentation on transitioning to college with a sleep disorder. I'd like to introduce myself and my co-presenter. I am Dr. Susan Schultz, and my doctorate is in education, not in a physical nature, not one of the sciences, so I just want to be clear about that. And my co-presenter, Dr. Chris Nelson-Tuttle, is a doctorate in nursing. Now, we both have sleep disorders ourselves, and we are both parents of young men with sleep disorders. So that gives us a little bit of a perspective, not only from the educational side, but also as parent and as a person who deals with the sleep disorder. So our agenda today, I just want to tell you a little bit about what we're going to do today. We're going to give you some quick information about the regulations and the paperwork process, and a little bit about college information and academics. We're really going to focus on the academics and the campus life and the medical needs piece, because those are the sort of things that get people in trouble in the college setting. So we want to make sure that you're best prepared for being successful. So and I also wanted just a little disclaimer. We're not trying to recruit people to our college. So don't think that we're trying to tell you all to come to Rochester, New York. You're welcome to if you'd like, but that's not our intention of this particular presentation. So when you're thinking about colleges yourself, one of the things that you have to think about is, first off, a choice of a major. What's going to be a major that's going to work for you and your narcolepsy? And as much as I'd like to say that the world is open to you and you have choices, those choices are within reason. You have to be able to make sure that you're going to be able to be successful in the field that you go into, because you're spending a lot of money on a college program. Most of the time it's your dollars. Sometimes you get some federal funding or some state grants or something along those lines, but a lot of folks leave with college debt, and so you want to make sure that in the end you're going to be successful in the choice that you go into. You want to look at a college that's going to have a balance for you, something that you're interested in besides the academics. Think about school sizes. Sometimes private schools have smaller classrooms. You might not want to go to a school where you're going to be one of 300, where you're going to get lost in a crowd of people. Think about your distance from home. Do you want to be from home a little bit to get a little bit of independence, or do you need the support of your family where you might want them to be able to get to you in a short amount of time if that was necessary? Sometimes people like to go to a campus where they already know some previous college friends, high school friends, relatives, if you've got a cousin or somebody on a campus, so you've got that kind of support system. Or you might go to a college where you have relatives in that neighborhood, so you've got a little bit of extraneous support. And you have to make this decision, are you going to commute or are you going to live on campus? And when you're living on campus, you don't have to worry about the transportation piece, but when you are commuting, it's also less expensive, and you get more support from your family, and they might be able to nudge you in the morning to wake you up, so there's like pluses and minuses to both. You also have to think the difference between a two-year college and a four-year college. Two-year colleges certainly are less expensive, and sometimes they have better support systems, to be honest. Sometimes they have a computer for every student who goes through their office of support, but you can have that stay-at-home support. But the difficulty with that is sometimes you also you're going to make friends and get connected to a school, get to know how to navigate it and navigate the system, and then all of a sudden you're in a different place and you have to start over again. So if you have trouble with those kind of transitions and making friends, then maybe you don't want to think about going on to a two-year to then jump to a four-year program. Online classes are a nice possibility, because if they are asynchronous, or that means you can follow your own schedule, that works really well for you, because when you've got those wakeful times, you can concentrate on your academics. However, if they're synchronous, which means that your butt has to be in that seat at a particular time, 4 o'clock on a Tuesday, that might not be any better than going onto a college campus. So you have to keep that in mind as well. So the first place to start when you're thinking about going off to college is to make sure that your documentation's in order. And when you're in a college setting, that IEP that you might have had if you had an IEP in high school no longer follows you. Everything falls under the Americans with Disabilities Act. That is a federal program. It has nothing to do with what state you are in. And so you have to make sure that all your assessments are up to date. Best time to do that is to have your high school update all your testing and anything that you might need, because it's not going to be an expense to you. If you do that as an adult, if your insurance doesn't cover it, you either are responsible for a copay or the whole cost of an evaluation. So it's always good to make sure that your high school has all your records up to date. And also, if you have any particular medical needs that your physician is going to document, I always suggest to you that you keep copies of everything. Think about those things. It's always good to have something in hand. If your physician wants you to be in a bottom bunk because you need a CPAP machine, or you know you're going to have to be in a bottom bunk because the cord, you roll around a lot and the cord only reaches so far and you don't want to fall to bed or strangle yourself, or you sleepwalk and you're afraid of falling out of the top level of a bunk, you might need to put that in writing to make sure that it happens. And then the other piece is once you put it in writing and you give it to the school to make sure it happens, you still have to self-advocate to make sure that it happens. Go out there and talk to people and say, do I need to come in early into the dorm to make sure I get the right bunk and all those sorts of things, because so many layers of people are involved, sometimes the message doesn't get to where it's supposed to go. So once you are in a college setting, you are covered under the Americans with Disabilities Act 504. That covers every single state. So your state has, whatever the rules are for your state, doesn't make a difference. Are you under a national program? The American with Disabilities Act requires that you have access to the programs and the services that other people would have. The difference between IDEA, if you were in a high school program, that focuses on success. So colleges have to provide you access. The being successful part falls more on you. You have to really start putting some effort into making sure that you're going to be successful. And also, whenever there are any kind of medical accommodations, the law states that they need to be reasonable accommodations. So reasonable sometimes varies from school to school depending upon what they consider reasonable. Reasonable sometimes depends upon how good of a case you can make for what it is that you need. And so this is where you have to, again, advocate for yourself and make sure your documentation is in place. So every college receives funding from the Higher Education Act. Therefore, every college needs to provide services to anybody who needs those sort of accommodations, people with disabilities, medical needs, those levels of support. The unfortunate thing is, although every college needs to provide these services, not every college is created equal. And so you have to do a little bit of legwork before you go off to a college to make sure that you are finding the right fit for you. Some of the things you can look at is stop at that. Usually medical things fall under the Office of Disabilities as well. So stop at that office and find out how many people do they have working in it, and like what's the ratio of adults in that office or graduate students, whatever the case may be, to the people who use the services. If you find you've got one person for a campus that has 15,000 people on it, well, you know the level of service you're going to get is going to really be competing with everybody else who needs that service. And you can also, if you can manage a trip to where you're going, spend a little time outside that office, ask people questions, get a sense of what their attitudes are. Talk to faculty, get a sense to what their attitudes are. And a piece that you should think about when you're talking to admission counselors is admission counselor's job is to get you to go to that school. So there's a lot of stretching the truth of what can be offered. And I've talked to several people at several colleges, and faculty always say the same thing. When they hear admission counselors talk, they think to themselves, we don't do that. We can't do that. And it happens all the time. Admissions counselors want to get your body in the seat at that school. So you have to make sure that what you're being told, either get it in writing or check around and make sure that it's accurate. The other thing that we suggest is that you take the time to go to that office, pick up the paperwork, and complete that loop. You have to fill out the paperwork, turn it back in. You may never need it, but it's there for you if you do. And it's always helpful to have everything in place before you need it than to go back afterwards and say, but I have a sleep disorder, I have narcolepsy, because then it looks as if you're making an excuse. But if you go up and you talk about these things in advance, then you're being very proactive. You might be able to make some schedule adjustments depending upon classes. Technology is in your favor. Technology is moving so rapidly right now that every college student has technology that they bring to class with them. So you're not going to stand out in any way, shape, or form if you bring a smart pen to your school program, or if the Office of Disabilities or Office of Student Support, whatever it might be called at your college, they oftentimes will provide you with a smart pen. So if you have a smart pen, you're no different than anybody else in the class because a lot of people will have a smart pen. How many of you are familiar with what a smart pen is? It's, okay, a couple folks. It's relatively new technology. There's a range, like any technology, where you can get some of it that's less expensive, or the cream of the crop that will probably call your mother for you if you wanted it to, and they do all sorts of different things. But the typical smart pen will record what's happening while you are writing. And so it's got a little mechanism in the tape recorder in it. If you are writing notes of whatever it is that you think is important, it will sync the lecture to the notes. You have to use special paper. So it'll sync the lecture to the notes. You can go back later, plug the little device from the smart pen into your computer, and it'll print out the lecture for you. So you have access to what was being said within that class. So while you're taking your notes, if you happen to drift off for a little bit, your smart pen is still getting that information for you, gathering it for you. So that's a really useful tool to have, because you don't have to like wake up and then say, what did I miss? Because you know that your lecture is going to have caught that. Oops, how did I do that? So having that paperwork in place is really very important. A lot of the literature that's out there, research tells us that when you are making a jump from high school to college, it's your first real shot at being independent. And so people want to be successful on their own. So for whatever reason, they think they can do it themselves, they wanted to do it themselves, they want a fresh start, nobody knows them there. Those sort of things sometimes get in the way of people completing the paperwork process. What you really should do is fill out that paperwork, close the loop, because it offers you protection if you have a problem later on. Something happens where you need it, that paperwork is in place. If you never need it, wonderful, but it's there to fall back on just in case there's a problem. Looking at accommodations, accommodations are supposed to provide you equal access. They can't change an academic program. So if you had a math disability and you wanted to go into pharmacy or nursing or engineering, but you tell them, I can't, because of my disability, I can't take any math, well, that doesn't fly. You have to be able to successfully complete a program. The same thing with a sleep disorder. You have to be able to get through that program with accommodations. People should be there to support you through your program. But they can't exempt you from taking tests or any of the clinical assignments. You can't say, I want to be a teacher, but I can't get up at 8 o'clock in the morning, so I'm going to, or 7:30 if you're a high school teacher, so I'm just going to teach in the afternoon. That's unlikely that a program is going to make the kind of accommodation for you. However, sometimes clinical assignments can be in the afternoon or in the evening, and that might be a way to provide some support and to help you out. So we have to look at whether or not we can provide an adjustment to a program. Consider that. If it can be possible, we try to make it possible. If it can't be possible, then we really need to have a conversation about, is this the right program for you? Because again, we want you to be able to go out into a career and be successful in that career. It doesn't help you to get through a program if you can't utilize it when you're all said and done. And there is absolutely no shame in being a super senior. Your parents might not like to think about that because it might mean an extra year of tuition. But if it takes you that 5th year to get through your school program successfully, then you've completed it successfully. It's better to take 5 years and get through a program, slow it down a little bit if you have to, than to spend 2 years in a program and not be successful in it and quit. So if you need that extra time, take that extra time. So you might think to yourself, what about the laws? You said to me that there are laws to protect me. Well, those laws do not waive requirements of a program. So if you couldn't complete the clinical assignments for a nursing program, or you couldn't work in a lab if you couldn't do the science experiments that you needed to, if there's something that's a requirement, they can't waive it. So again, it provides access, equal access, but the success part falls on you. So a lot of the typical college accommodations are things like extended time or a quiet environment. For my son, a quiet environment would work because he'd be asleep in about 10 minutes. So it's better than if he'd be in a classroom with lots of noise. You might need a note taker, an exam writer. Those are typical accommodations. One of the things parents ask us all the time is there a way to get some kind of wake-up call? And sometimes parents of typical kids ask that same question. I'm afraid he's going to sleep through all his 8 o'clock classes. How do I get him woken up? There are no wake-up calls on any campus. Sometimes people set up buddy systems or will provide gift cards to kids in the dorm who will go and knock on the door and make sure somebody's up or nudge, whatever the case may be. Roommates can be very helpful in that respect. but there's no wake-up call per se. So lots of supports on campus though, so it's up to you again to take advantage of them. Go into the writing centers or the tutoring centers or the career center, whatever might be helpful to you. Use your resident director. The resident director might be able to do some floor monitoring and knock on your door to make sure you're awake. Talk to your professors. Your professors have office hours. We get lonely. Nobody ever comes to see us. Be personal with your professor, and if they get to understand you and know you, they're going to be much more supportive and helpful to you. So every college has its warts. Take a moment to find out what they are. If something doesn't work, see if it's possible that you can work something out with that professor. It's kind of like thinking about the laws. They have to provide you with the car, but they don't have to provide you with the Cadillac. So you have to think about need versus want. What do you need? What do you want? And make a case for what you think you need. So when we get to the academic portion, particularly if you're in a large school, every semester, go to your professors and have a little conversation. And don't go up to your professor at the end of class when 50 other people are sticking something in their face and trying to get their attention. Make an appointment with them, go to their office hour, again, that personal connection, and to make sure that they know who you are and that there's the special accommodations that you might need. Because even if it's from semester to semester, somebody that you had in the past, they might forget about some of those things that you need, and you don't want to lose time. You don't have to chase them down and say, well, you should have done this and this and this. There are also privacy laws. So the privacy laws don't allow faculty, unless you're under 18, to speak with students. So if you have a problem, again, this becomes part where you have to do some self-advocating. You can bring your parent with you, or you might go to sign a release that says, talk to my parents. But if your parents call and say, why did he get a B? We can't talk to them. We have to talk to the student first. So the student, it's hard because you're paying the bill as parents, but you don't get to see the report card. So you say, well, I'm paying the tuition, but why can't I see my daughter or my son's report card? Well, once they're 18, they're considered adults. So if you're in one of those classes where there's not a lot of feedback, sometimes things are front-loaded or back-loaded, and if it's back-loaded, then all the grading things, you're turning in a binder of things at the end, or you have a final exam and a midterm and not a lot in between. Stop your professor and ask them, how am I doing? Take a little time to again, ask for some feedback. And if your professor knows that you're interested and you're trying hard, that goes a long way. So talk to them directly, even if you've had them before. Your paperwork only tells so much. If I get paperwork on a student that has a seizure disorder or an auditory processing disorder or narcolepsy, that's what I know they have. I don't know how they learn. I don't know what works for them, what doesn't work for them. I just know they might need extended time and that they have auditory processing. So I might think to myself, well, maybe I should go stand closer, but for some students, maybe it'd be better if I was, across the room. So I don't know that. I just get a very little bit of documentation on a page. So it really, again, is up to you to be an advocate for yourself. So take a moment. Ask the people in your classroom, your professors, this is what I need. I might need written information. I might need you to walk over and nudge me if I look like I'm starting to drift off, or to make eye contact with me so I know you know that I'm awake. Those sort of things would be helpful for me. So you again have to personalize your learning. So you have to be the problem solver. You have to be part of the solution. If you can't do something and you know a way that you're going to be able to be successful, you tell your professor and they should be able to provide it to you if they know that this is what you need. So if you'd say to them, if you're going to give me an assignment where I'm supposed to read in class and the whole class is reading quietly, I'm probably going to have a hard time concentrating and not get through it. So if I had that material ahead of time where I could read it when I'm bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, at the best time that works for me, I would certainly read it ahead of time so I'm prepared for class. Your professors are going to be ecstatic that you're taking that kind of an interest. So own your own education. I'm going to pass this along to my colleague.
Sure, it works for you. All right, some tips that you might not be familiar with is sitting in the academic triangle. The reality is professors can't see everything, but we make the most eye contact in a triangle. So wide base, going in the center where there's contact. So you don't want to be the person that's sitting out in the periphery or way in the back. Okay? We like to make eye contact. We like to see an engaged student, and that is a better match for us when you're calling or emailing or showing up to office hours. oh, I know who that person is, or yes, I did see them struggling, but I saw them trying hard. You want to surround yourself with the best supports, okay, academically. If you're involved in group work and you have the ability to pick your group, you want to pick the people that perhaps you have disclosed to or that you know are supportive. Okay? You may have to disclose to a group if you're doing a group project. Also, when you may pick a study buddy, pick a smart study buddy, okay? Someone who's doing well in the class. That might not be your best friend, okay? Because someone who's doing well in the class knows how the professor is asking the questions, they know how to answer it, they also know the expectations. So surround yourself with success. You need to think about favors like a bank account. And the reality is you will probably need some favors during college, okay, when you're dealing with a sleep disorder. You have to put resources in to get resources out. So at times that you're doing well and can handle maybe some extra work and pitch in for a buddy in a group project or be the person that is, lining up a study session, do what you can. So on the times that you're not sailing as high and need more help, it's there for you. Some of the assistant technology that we talked about, the LiveScribe pens, fantastic if you tend to drift off. Alternate the reading levels when you're doing your work, okay? So say you're taking chemistry course, really hard, dense material. Don't put hours with just that dense material. Break it up a little bit. Maybe you're taking a history class that you like a little better, is a little bit easier reading. Break it up so that you stay interested, so you have less chance of zoning out and tuning out. Books on tape are great if you are a better audio person with the listening and perhaps can cover more material faster than the reading. There's some of us, myself included, that knows that there's some textbooks, if I start reading, I'm good for about 3 pages, and the rest is snoozing, okay? So realize that those are available on most college campuses. We also have abilities for text to speak. Okay, so check with your bookstore. Usually the bookstore managers are more than happy to try to investigate that for you. So realize that there is a lot more technology that can be available to help you with success. Another thing to remember though, taping a professor's lecture requires permission, okay? Any professor worth their grain of salt is going to give you permission, but occasionally they might be talking about their own individual research or something that they have a patent applying for and science-based, so that's considered protected intellectual property. So you just have to let them know that you have a disability or a reason to ask them if you can tape it and for what reason that you're doing that, and they would most likely help you out with that right away. So managing the time, okay? What you need to realize in college is that you're going to be doing a lot more proactive time because what you're doing yourself is preparing yourself for the times that you're not able to do it, okay? The times that you're having trouble, might be a med change, might be a stress change, that for some reason you're relapsing or requiring more assistance. So you have to develop realistic work plans, okay? Plan your study blocks and your classes when you know that you're most alert. Okay. For most colleges, for the majors, you usually have a choice of which section you're going to be in. Some are at 8 o'clock in the morning, some are later in the afternoon, some are in the evening. Take a look at that and plan. That's another thing too. If you are upfront with your accommodations and file your paperwork, you can get, it might be, let's face it, on a college campus, not many people are racing for the 8 o'clock class. Surely the 11 o'clock fills up a little bit faster. If you need the 11 o'clock though and you filed accommodations, you're going to get a seat. So keep that in mind too. You're going to want to set your daily priorities and your tasks to line up when you're doing the best. Start with your least favorite subjects. Make sure those get done because those are always the ones that are going to get avoided. Or if you have prereqs that you have to get a certain grade in for the major or acceptance into the junior and senior level, make sure you're focusing on those. Remember that the management of time is very different in high school because most classes don't meet every day. They're usually either Tuesday, Thursday, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Some of the classes I teach meet once a week. So you don't want to procrastinate thinking, oh, I've got 7 more days, or 6 more days, or 5 more days, and all of a sudden it's the night before, and you haven't done the work for it. And remember that the workloads can be different for the different majors. I teach in nursing. We are a very test-based major, so we stay pretty up the entire time, where if you might be deciding to major in English or history, you may have a few huge papers, but they're at the end. So again, line that up with what you're doing and what are the requirements of the course. Going to class, you should always go. We know in college it's not like high school where mom's going to drag you and make sure you and your backpack are on the bus, okay? But the thing about going to college, even if you're not having a fantastic day where you can take all the notes and participate, the professor sees you, okay? So reasons that we would like to hear, we wouldn't like to say, I didn't come because I wasn't prepared, because I didn't do the assignment, I didn't do your reading, and I didn't participate in the group work, okay? What we like to hear, even if you couldn't get it all done, is that I got most of the reading done, I'm going to try to finish it this week. You can certainly ask for an extension. Most professors would like to see quality work, much more so than worrying about the deadline of 10 a.m. on a Tuesday versus a Wednesday. Okay, so be upfront if you need that. Especially with group activities, you've got to be upfront with them and know when your best capabilities are. If they're trying to plan a group meeting, plan it on a time that you do the best at, okay? Not the time that you know that you're gonna doze off. Because even if you're struggling, they might think that you're uninterested if you choose not to disclose, okay? When indeed, that's not what's going on, okay? So be, as much as you can, compliant with letting the group know that you are interested in doing that. For purposeful reading, obviously the major that I teach in, we know that we assign more reading than probably anyone in the world could get done reasonably in a week. And we call it purposeful perusing, okay? Sometimes we will say, don't go from the beginning to the end, okay? Pick out sections that are highlighted, okay? That you know that you've prepared because you've read the objectives in the beginning of the chapter, okay? Or the questions at the end, so you know what is important in that chapter to focus on. Okay, looking for key important terms and definitions, okay, developing chapter outlines or notes. Your professor may have study guides or chapter outlines. That way you know what the professor thinks is important to get out of that chapter, and you're matching your time with that. Rubrics. Rubrics can be a student's best friend and a professor's nightmare, okay? They're great things to communicate expectations. Unfortunately, sometimes they can cramp student creativity because a lot of times what we find as professors, we'll only get back what we put on the rubric, okay? But it gives the expectations of an assignment, so it's excellent as a checklist. Okay, did I cover this? Did I cover this? Did I cover this? Okay? And you can line that up in the organization of the assignment with attention to weighting. Okay? With rubrics, when professors give them, they give usually a certain amount of points or percentage of the grade that is slotted into that section. Okay? You want to make sure that you put the weighting appropriate for that. So you might like the best part of the section that's only worth 10% of the grade. Okay? Where you really need to focus on the meat of it, the things that may have 30 or 40% of the grade lined up for that. And try to accommodate your time. Okay, if you have an abbreviated amount of time to try to get an assignment done, making sure you're focusing on what's going to bring back the most return on the grade. Life skills. These are the little ins and outs that you don't see on the lovely, flashy, shiny brochures that colleges give you, that how you actually get through this, especially when you're dealing with a sleep disorder. Okay? Choices of alarm clocks. Okay, and you want to weigh the choice as far as awakening yourself or awakening the dorm, okay? And especially with roommates or if you're tripled or quadded, okay? So working out what works well with you, and you may want to start that transition before you go. If you've been using an auditory alarm, maybe you need to start trying 1 or 2 or 3 of the vibratory alarms, okay? You might want to put one under your pillow and one on both wrists. Okay, because again, you're going to be in a situation where there's more than just you to think about.
Can you interrupt for just a second? How many of you are familiar with the sonic boom alarm clock? It was, okay, how about it was made for people with hearing loss, and it's a little disc goes under your pillow, and it will jolt out the tone system, in Europe, like, your body's attached to what it sounds like. So you can change every ringtone on your phone, or turn your laptop up as much as it can be, you still might not hear it. But the sonic boom is like kind of giving you a little nudge under the pillow, so it's useful in that respect, that it'll nudge you awake.
They're also great for spouses that have different work schedules, or a husband who likes to go to the gym at 4 a.m., okay? Wiggles him, not his significant other on the other side. Choosing study areas. The quiet level on the library, the designated quiet rooms may be too quiet, okay? And we've talked a little bit about that too, as far as what's the best atmosphere. It may be the library, but not necessarily the quiet area. So there's some activity going around to keep you as alert as possible. Okay, some students can be successful studying in their room if they're sitting at the desk. Okay, we don't recommend you try studying in bed because your bed says, yeah, you're here. Let's do what you usually do here. Then you're not getting your studying done. So again, it may take some work to get used to how this will work out. You may not be able to study in your room, especially if you've been tripled or in a quad. Okay, there's a lot more people and a lot more things going on than at home that you might be used to. Setting alarms when you're studying, especially if you're trying to get studying done during a time that you know you're not as wakeful, okay? Maybe setting an alarm every 20 or 30 minutes so that if you drift off, you've lost 20 minutes. You haven't lost 3 hours, okay? So being used to that. And there are wrist alarms that, and actually if you go to look for them, you look for them for runners because runners will set certain minutes. Then they may take a rest to certain minutes, take a rest. You can preset it so it automatically resets easily. Okay, and they have those at Dick's. Are you prepared for dorm living with a sleep disorder? Okay, now the skills on the left-hand side are skills that most people have to be successful in college. Okay, money management, budgeting, sharing spaces, laundry. Yes, surprise, your mom would love it if you showed up without your laundry on the weekends that you come. Nutrition, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in just a minute when I talk about managing side effects of medications. Can be more challenging when it's not mom cooking and you've got a free-for-all at the dorm, at the dining hall. Managing activity time, reading a map. You might think this is funny, but the reality is you've probably been riding it around in a car or a GPS, or if you're not the one driving to your health provider appointments or the pharmacy to get your meds, okay, you may need to know how to do that in a new city. So being able to get you where you need to go. Being assertive. Okay, you're going to be living with people you may not have or obviously have a relationship with. And you're going to have to be able to advocate for yourself, especially when you're living with a sleep disorder. So taking medications for the sleep disorders, for most of you who know, how many are on medications for sleep disorders? Okay. This is a tricky area in college because a lot of this controlled stimulants, there's also many of them that happen to be some of the most abused drugs on college campuses, okay? So one of the things we recommend is you go with a lockbox. It's two purposes. Number one, you won't misplace your meds, bonus, okay? Number two, no one can get your meds that shouldn't have it other than you, okay? So we're not saying that, oh my gosh, your roommates are gonna be criminals. We're saying be proactive about some of the concerns that we know come up in college. One of the other things that happens too is the fact that a lot of these are controlled substances. So it's a challenge, okay, for the students. Occasionally some of the stimulants, depending on how long you've been on them and how your insurance will work, will do the 90-day supply. So it may be able to cover a student to the next break, okay? Some of them don't. Some of them are only a 1-month supply. You've got to bring the script in. Check with your insurance. There may be a medication advocate, okay, that will help you with it. And some of the national pharmacy chains, okay, realize that it's a college student that needs this med and can work that out too. So your mom may be able to bring in the handwritten script to the Walgreens in your town, and the Walgreens 3 hours away at college will take that, okay? So being proactive about some of those medication issues. We talked a little bit about waking yourself up, okay? It also helps too, again, if your roommate is on the same schedule or has the same class. I know with my son, he's in a quad, 2 of his other roommates are taking anatomy at 9, so they make sure Ryan's up for anatomy at 9 too, okay? So again, using what resources you have. Learning how to maintain the sensory issues, okay? It's not quiet, it may not be as quiet like it is home, Dorm floors are usually bustling until the wee hours of the morning, okay? So getting used to sleep hygiene, how it works in a dorm may be very, very different than it worked at home. Safety issues. Safety issues can be a big concern for not just the narcolepsy of the sleep disorders, the somnambulism. So for the kids that are sleepwalkers, all right, you really have to do some proactive planning for those too. Not only looking at where the dorm is placed, okay, I can give you one specific example for where they have dorm problems for sleepwalkers. Cornell, a lot of the dorms are on gorges, okay? So if you make a wrong move at 3 a.m., okay, walking in your jammies, it could be detrimental. So again, having disclosed the medical need for consideration, dorms that are in a safe location if in case a student is sleepwalking. Location of furniture in a room, okay? Perhaps if there is a 2-room in a suite situation, that if your son or daughter is a sleepwalker, positioning them away so that it takes 2 doorways before they're out walking the quad in their jammies, okay? And also barriers can be made with furniture. Before we would have to consider the locking mechanisms, the sensory mechanisms to pass through, or we have used them before on college campuses, bracelets that we use on Alzheimer patients that we can monitor. They have a chip in them. We let security know so-and-so has wandered off. We've essentially GPSed your kid, okay? But again, those are other accommodations that sometimes have to be made for safety reasons. And even hitting communication in general with roommates. And how do you feel about disclosing that? The problem with sleep disorders is not only are they an invisible disorder, but frequently they're invisible to the person that has them, okay? So essentially, you're waking up and saying, what did I miss? And they tell you what you missed. Or in my son's situation, the things he's done while sleepwalking, okay? It's invisible to him. He only has us to rely on to tell him that. So again, approaching that with roommates can be difficult, especially with people that you haven't made contact with. Most college campuses, when they hook you up with a roommate, will send you email, will send you usually their cell number. A lot of Facebooking is involved. We encourage students too, if you don't feel like talking about it right out front, you might want to say, hey, I need to talk about this with you when we get there, but if you could look at this website, okay, that explains the disorder, okay, before they have to have the face-to-face conversation, it can really be helpful. Okay, the time suckers, and we all deal with these, okay? Social media, Facebook, things like that, okay? For generations that have been raised on it, realizing that you really have to watch where it can gobble up your time in college, especially, again, if you're trying to plan your week. So if you have an off sleep week, that you've made the best use of your time. So again, setting limits on your time, saying, yep, I'm going to go on Facebook, but I'm only going to go on it for 15 minutes and set my alarm, and then I'm back to whatever I was working on. So again, realizing, because the time management is such a big problem in college, because it usually takes significantly more time to be successful at the college level than at the high school level. So spiraling down and realizing when it happens, okay? So that you know when you're starting to make excuses as a student, so parents know when they start to hear these things of what can happen. You need to get an assignment done, it's overdue. You couldn't do it the night before because you were tired. Well, now you're tired because you were out of meds. You're out of meds because you had to skip going to the pharmacy because you were late on the assignment and had to get that done. You can't go to the pharmacy, you need to get the assignment, now it's overdue, and then you've spiraled down to where you're out of meds, you're out of sleep, or you've had too much sleep, and you're out of time, okay? So realizing that this can happen very, very easily and to intervene early rather than late. Making friends. Being new to college is pretty scary, okay? Especially if you don't have anything familiar there, as someone else from your school going, anything like that. Sleep disorders in themselves can be isolating, okay? Because again, they are one of the less common of some of the disabilities, but also because of the invisibility factor. So we don't want you to isolate yourself, okay? So stay off your phone during orientation, actually make face-to-face contact, verbal contact, okay? Join a club, Social, it might be related to your major, it might be something totally new. So this is the time where there's a lot of new things that you can experience that you may have never had a chance to do before, but it also brings you together with new people, okay? And attending social events and activities. Again, so you're wider, not only are you widening your interests, but you're widening your support group while you're away from home. And social and emotion. So emotional intelligence has a lot more to do with your emotional well-being and your ability to handle stress and coping skills. And that's different than our preconceived notion of intelligence, of how smart you are. Pretty much we know with genes and environment, it's pretty set as far as your IQ, okay? But your emotional intelligence, you can learn. So realize that maybe you haven't had to develop really strong coping skills because you've had a net at home. You have to work on doing this, okay? So it's certainly time to do it at the end of high school, early in college, to develop that emotional IQ as best you can, because we know that there's a strong connection between emotional intelligence and academic success. Most people are smarter, they wouldn't have gotten to college to begin with. It's the coping and the motivation that separates the ones who make it the 4 years and get the degree, or the graduate school, or the doctorate. And organization strategies, okay? Only handling it once. If it's going to take less than 2 minutes, do it now, don't wait. Develop your schedule, writing in your classes, your sleep time, okay? Your extra study time, okay? And rest and relaxation. And to remember to label who, what, where, and why, so you don't just write a one-liner library study group, so you know who's in the study group, what you're supposed to be studying, what assignment's supposed to be done. I'm going to let my colleague finish the summary for key points, and then we can take some questions.
So the summary of our key points is that you should have your documentation, and you should have a copy of it for yourself. You might want to either have an electronic copy that you keep on the cloud, or put it in your filing cabinet, but be able to access that documentation so you have everything that you need in one place. Have a plan in place just in case. So you might not need to any of those support that occur from the Office of Support or Office of Disabilities, whatever that might be called on your college campus. You would have it in place just in case you need it. It's kind of your fallback. And also develop relationships with people on your campus. So spend a little time getting to know people, put your support group in place so that they can help you be successful. And there's one key one that's missing up here. Learn to be a self-advocate. You have to be the person who is working the hardest for you. You're the reason why you're at college. You're going to be the person who is going to go out into the world with some sort of skill set. You want to make sure that you are arguing or presenting whatever it is that you need to be helpful. Whatever you need that's going to be supportive to you. So we're going to end just quickly on 5 things you should never say to your professor. Did I miss anything important in class? Well, the professor's going to say, well, everything I say is important. So yes, you missed something important. So they don't want to hear that. Also, I just took your class because I heard it's an easy A. It doesn't sit well with your professors. I didn't know we had anything due. In a college, you'll have a college syllabus that tells you when things are due. And professors will oftentimes remind you that things are due. And if you're smart, you'll check with your peers. Do you have anything due this week? But people say this kind of thing all the time. I didn't know we had something due. I was so busy doing the work for my other class that I didn't have the time to do the work for your class. So that tells them, your professor, that you don't think their class is as important as some of these other classes that you're taking. So if you're trying to develop a relationship with them, not the way to go. And lastly, did you answer my email yet? The funny thing about this technological society that we live in is information turns around so quickly. And one time a student called me again, emailed me, and then called my dean to say I was being non-responsive. And that was all in about 45 minutes time, and I was teaching a class. Well, I was like, well, hello, dude, I don't think you're still teaching. And my dean said, I thought it was like days that you hadn't gotten back to her. I was like, no, look at my office, 2 phone calls and an email saying, why didn't you get back to me? So I usually use the 24-hour turnaround time rule. If you haven't heard back from your professor within 24 hours, then sure, fine, give them a nudge. But give them the time to answer you first. So they might have something else on their plate that they need to respond to. So we're going to leave you with our business cards. Our contact information is on the PowerPoint. And I want to give you a moment for questions, should you have any. Is there anybody who has a question? Yes?
How feasible do you think it is
expectation that you be in that class for 5 days? I think I would talk to your office of whatever accommodations that you have and the professor to find out if there's a way that you could be on some sort of an alternate schedule or a hybrid sort of level of that class to see whether they can maybe have you do work on your own for one of those days over the course of the week. If that's what your body needs and you can support that from a medical documentation standpoint.
You may be able to plan the podcast, and so they podcast the lecture so you can do it when you're awake.
Yes? I spent a lot of time looking for scholarship money for my son, and the response that I pretty much got was that we don't give scholarship money to people who are going to sleep their way through college, and the people didn't understand. Their assumption was that why spend scholarship dollars on somebody who's not going to be successful because they're going to sleep their way through college. So I didn't really find a whole heck of a lot in terms of scholarship dollars, but you might want to look for scholarships in other areas. Is there anything that you have a Kiwanis group in your neighborhood that might provide scholarship money? Is there if you're in a rural area, is there a Grange that would provide scholarship money? Was your grandfather on the railroad? So
Maybe a great suggestion for the narcolepsy.
I think so too. Give them a nudge in terms of scholarship funds. And also check with your financial aid office if you haven't already to see if they have something to suggest. Yes?
When you're